Hey everybody, welcome to Better Utah Broadcast. My name is Katie Matheson. I'm here with Dr. Susan Madsen from the Utah Women in Leadership Project with UVU. We apologize again for some of these technology issues. We are on site down in Highland, so we're working out the technology as we go. We're on. So can you, Dr. Madsen, give me a little bit of the background into what you do? I know you have a huge background, but can you just succinctly kind of summarize what you do and where you've done it?
Well, I am a professor of leadership and ethics in the Woodbury School of Business right now at UVU. I've been there for about 16 years, actually, just almost at 16 years. And so my paid work is really my professor role, which I teach and do research and actually do global research and publish and have been for probably 15 years publishing on women in leadership issues. So do lots of books and those kinds of things. But about 10 years ago, I was asked by the Commissioner of Higher Education to look at some issues in the state of Utah. He came to me and said, we're below the national average on women graduating from college in the state of Utah. Can you figure out what's going on? Can you do some research on that? That was about 9-10 years ago. And so that's really when I took my background in, and I have a doctorate in human resource development from a college of education. I used to teach junior high many years ago.
Oh, nice.
I come from the education side, but also the business side. I'm in the School of Business. But I had published some books on women in leadership, and he said, you care about girls and women. Can you figure out what's going on in the state of Utah in terms of women not graduating from college? And so that's really when I dived into the Utah work in the state of Utah and really did some in-depth research about 8-9 years ago around the state to answer some of those questions about what's going on with women in education. And actually, we have a report coming out next week that's going to do an update now after about 8 or 9 years on the research and what's happening with that. But I've always been speaking, even at that time, on women in leadership, and had been requests. We started putting data out there and had some requests for data, not just on women in education, but women in leadership. So 2013 is when I dived into taking those on, and then realized I actually need a website if I'm going to release leadership data.
Right.
So started the Utah Women in Leadership Project at that time. And so with that project, I have been doing that since, we've really been doing work in Utah for about 10 years. Right now, we have the education and the leadership all together in a project, and really, we still do we're kind of the gender research center of the state.
Wow.
So we do lots of research, snapshots and briefs. We have lots of resources, which you found, I think, on our website. And then we also host events. We host events, but we go out and speak. Tonight, I'll actually be in Heber City speaking to a group there. So that's a little bit of the background. I still do my classes and teach, but absolutely love the work that I do in terms of research and social change. That's what we're trying to do.
Right.
My role, I feel like it's a role I've given myself, is when you lead social change, you make people uncomfortable. So my reports say, here's Utah, here's the nation, there's a gap. Let's think about how we can address that.
Yeah, and it does. I like that you said that it makes people uncomfortable, because it does.
That's
it really
what change
does.
Is.
Yeah, because you're kind of fighting the status quo, and that happens. Cool. So what was it that attracted you to this work in particular? Like, you were approached to do it, but you were already doing something that caused someone to approach you. So why were you doing this?
I looked back, and actually during my master's work, which was a long time ago, in exercise physiology, I actually did all of my special work and papers on women's issues. And I have to say that I was raised with 6 brothers and no sisters. So it's very interesting that I moved, and in fact, my thesis years ago was on pregnancy and exercise. Oh, wow. And so I really had this interest in, and I will say I feel, at this point in my life, I feel very called, and I've published on women leadership and calling, and it can be from God, or if people aren't religious, you can just feel like you're supposed to do things. I'm religious, so I feel like I've been prepared in my education and my experiences, and that God actually wants me. I feel very called to do the work that I do and impact in different ways to help women go to college, understand they need to go to college, graduate, but also use their voices. I mean, find that confidence. Prepare your head, but through your education, but use your heart and really find that confidence and understand that you are needed. Your voice is needed in so many ways. So I feel very passionate, incredibly passionate about the work that I do. And it just feels like, I hope that makes sense. It feels it feels like this is what I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Like it's just something that fits.
It does. And sometimes you just go through life and you get, like I got my undergrad, then I had a couple kids, then I got a master's, then I had 2 more kids, and then I went back for my doctorate, and people would say, why in the world are you doing a doctorate? And it's like, I feel like I'm supposed to do that. And you don't know sometimes as you're moving forward why. But then when you're a little bit older like me and doing the work that you're doing, then you look back and say, each step, even having kids and learning all this stuff from having kids, each step, my education, my experiences have prepared me to be a voice in this state. And for some reason, I'm feeling very empowered to use my voice.
Good, I love it. We are all about empowerment and using voices. So completely sidetracked, but what is it that exactly did you find about exercise in pregnancy? Because I've been pregnant twice, and so I'm curious about...
Interestingly, after I did my dissertation, I had 2 kids that did my thesis, and then I was on bed rest for the last 2.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, just really looked at the details of that and how, if you can, which I couldn't the last couple, how effective it is in terms of... your physical body, but your emotional health as well, and how it's so important to be fit and it's healthy on your baby too. So very interesting kind of thing. I did other projects on PMS management through exercise and nutrition.
Oh wow, we'll have to talk.
Osteoporosis and women. So it's fascinating. But for some reason, I've been drawn to helping women, and especially. Exercise physiology sounds like a totally different degree, but I studied wellness and, your emotional and your mental and your physical health. And to me, it all relates because, when you go back to college and you learn, it's all part of your intellectual health as well. And just that whole person in being healthy and being able to contribute more in society. When you feel good, when you have... intelligence in your brain and you've built that, it gives you more confidence overall.
Oh, definitely.
And then you can use that and impact other people.
Yeah. So let's get into kind of some of the work that you have done.
Great.
There's a great body of work. So if you're ever interested, is it UVU Women's Leadership Project? Is that where we can find it?
Yeah, the easy URL is utwomen.org.
Perfect.
And that'll go right to it.
Yeah, if you are into data and research, go look at this stuff. There's so much of it in there. Each report is a couple pages long, and lots of really interesting findings on women in Utah and women's issues in Utah.
And just so you know, though, for those of you listening, there's so many other tools and different things. Like we list, there's tons of research, or not just research, but resources. For instance, we list all the women's groups in the entire state on one of our web pages. We link to every city and every county and the pages that tell you how to get involved in commissions or boards.
Awesome.
And then we have other people's research, so there's a lot of good stuff.
And you guys do conferences as well.
We do more evening events, not real conferences, but I speak at conferences a lot. But we have 4 big community events every year, and we live stream all of those. And we have a site that has actually all the videos, so there's tons of resources.
And if that's for young women as well, I've noticed you guys have for teenage women.
We try and really get young women into the conversation. So most of our events are 12 years old and up for young women and women, but also for people who influence them. So men are always welcome.
All right.
Because men need to be in the conversations. And I've had fathers of teenage daughters come and feel super empowered by understanding a little bit about the neuroscience, and how girls and boys are different, and it helps the way you raise your daughters and your sons to learn more about gender and those issues.
Oh, for sure, for sure. All right, so let's get into some of this work. And so I've kind of arranged it in a way that we're going to talk about the problem, briefly talk about the data, couple points, and then what's a solution if we have one, or like how do we work towards a solution, basically.
Great.
So for this first one, I wanted to talk about your report in February of 2015, Women, Confidence, and Leadership. So we are apparently regularly ranked, Utah is regularly ranked in the national lists as last on like the state of women in America. So what does that mean?
So it kind of sucks in some ways. And first of all, I need to say that that I love being a woman and I love living in Utah. So sometimes people take this and get really nervous, about coming to Utah or living in Utah. I think it's a great place for women. I think there's some things that definitely need to be tweaked. But we get on these lists really for 4 reasons. And one is our number of women in the legislature. Yeah. And we actually have gone up in the last year, and so we're making slight progress. 2002 actually was our best year ever. Oh. It's been interesting, and then it kind of went down. And this last year, we've gone up a little bit. So there's some hope in terms of that. So legislature, so there's 4 reasons. Legislator, the number of women in the state legislature is one. The number of women, out of the census data, the number of women or the percentage of women who are in management positions. And so we're about 30%, the nation's about 37, 38%. Educational attainment, even though some of our latest research says that men and women are now at associates and bachelor's about the same in Utah, we're still quite that. We've made some improvements. So this is the latest, the data that's going to be released next week, actually. But across the nation, so many more women are going to college that it still puts us below in terms of national. And then the 4th is the wage gap.
Oh, yes.
So it's those gap. 4 things, when you combine those, that tends to get us at the bottom or close to the bottom in most ways. And like I said, the education one we're starting to resolve, but we've still got some work to do. But I have to tell you that I've been pounding away for about 10 years on these issues. But in the last, I would say 3 years, there's some movement. It's great. There's some energy, more women's groups have popped up, lots more conferences. Have you noticed that? You're seeing conferences. And the news and media have picked up on so a lot of people are reaching out, yet there's still some myths and some different things out there and lack of understanding. So bottom line, there's some good energy, but we've got some
doing
work.
it.
We've got some work. I'll be honest there.
So here's what's really funny to me about this, and this is a little bit unscripted, so forgive me, but we did not start this way. Like when we were the first, right? So Better Days 2020, I don't know if you've worked with on their great
and I'm
group.
actually on their advisory board.
Oh, great, okay. So we've met with, I adore them, they're great. Yeah. So we started actually pretty well off in terms of women in political office, right? We were the first state to have a woman vote, right? We have first woman, Martha Hughes Cannon, in the state legislature, and the first, I believe, state to have a complete female city council and mayor down in Kanab,
great stories. Great story of the Kanab. I have a detailed story that I recently found about
So we're going to have storytelling with Dr. Madsen at a later date.
A different one.
So, what happened?
Well, I'll tell you that across the nation, if you look at the trends and the different, sometimes they're within the different waves of feminism, and if you look at what happened, that generally speaking, I mean, the especially Mormon women who came over at the time of Brigham Young were at the cutting edge of what I would still call feminism in terms of, I define feminism very broadly. I'm a feminist because I believe that women should have a voice and they should be respected and they should get equal pay. And so sometimes we don't like that word here in Utah.
I'm all for it.
Reframe your question. Now I forgot.
What happened to Utah?
Thank you. So really during if you look at the history of women, all these men were on missions, and women really took hold and earned money and did all of that. But in the 50s and 60s, specifically US-wide, there was really a separation. Women started staying home and men worked. And during that time is really when we changed in Utah. And we changed even more dramatically than the nation. So we really went with what was happening nationally, but then we really changed in terms of our culture, especially here in Utah. And really looked at that. And we haven't recovered like the nation has in terms of those. And so some of the cultural issues, they don't even align. I happen to be Mormon LDS myself, but they don't even align some of the practices with the doctrines of the LDS Church. There's just some interesting dynamics. Yeah. And so I work with women all the time. I speak to women all the time, and I've had many women say, well, that's not our role to use our voices or lead. And I, of course, say that's crap. So,
I adore you.
It's I don't swear, but crap and sucks are my words. But because that's not right. It's not what our history was. It's not, in my opinion, what God wants women to do. We need women to be involved in society and in companies and the different elements. So it's very interesting to look at the history, and I really love the work of Better Days 2020, and they're going to be highlighting some of those stories to really help. I think, when you understand history, especially the wonderful history that we have in Utah, it's the purpose of helping people understand history is to help us move forward. And people, that might seem a little weird, but as we understand how important it is to have voice and have confidence and how we can really change people's lives, including children and families, that hopefully will motivate more women to understand, hey, I am smart. I can use this voice, and it's my role to do so.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about childcare. And I selfishly put this one on here because this is an issue for me. I have 2 little babies, both little boys.
And by the way, that's our next research snapshot that'll probably be coming out in about June, is on childcare.
Can you get like a phone alert so I'll get it as soon as you send it out? So I want to run through these questions and then you can answer them as you want. So why is childcare a women's issue? Does it impact different demographics differently? What is the problem itself? Childcare deserts, cost, quality, stuff like that. What, if any, is the psychological impact of childcare or lack of childcare on women? The unpaid work, basically, stuff like that. And then, does it impact the wage gap?
All good questions.
Sorry,
that could take us like an hour, but I'll give you a little bit. It continues to be, whether we're in Utah or not, it continues to be a women's issue. Although it isn't really a women's issue, it's a family issue. But women, of course, continue to do most of the unpaid care work, continue to take care of the children more. So, especially in Utah, when more men work full-time and I must say that's changing. There's a lot of women that work too, but we have higher than the national average of women working part-time. Women, and I did the same thing. My husband went to work, I had the babies, I fed the babies, did that. And so it is viewed as a women's issue, but I will tell you that a research study last year here in the state of Utah through the Women in the Economy Commission found, in terms of, they did focus groups around the entire state, and it found with the issue of women in the economy, childcare was number 1 concern. Wow. Flexibility was 2. Wow. But number 1 concern in Utah for women who want to work outside the home or do paid work even in the home is childcare. So it's on their minds, and it is a serious issue for women here in Utah. And it obviously, it is a big concern for low-income women, but also the middle is really is. And the issues are around available. You wouldn't think this sometimes because there's so many women who have children, and you would think they would do a lot of daycare, and we would have plenty of daycare. But we're finding some of the same exact issues here in Utah that the literature talks about in the rest of the country. And that is the availability of childcare in general, and of course, quality childcare. Right. And it is so stressful on women. more than men. Women, we're made a little bit differently. we are nurturing, and we really worry more about children. In fact, I've said bluntly, I might offend somebody on there, that if men were raising all the children, we'd have more dead children because they'd be running in the roads.
Our intern Kyle is over here laughing and wincing.
Oh, my husband. I mean, I had a neighbor one time that said, when you were at your doctoral classes tonight, you had your 3 or 4-year-old wandering in the road.
Somebody told on your husband.
But we see danger more. We just pay attention.
It's like internalized.
Yeah. So we really, that is wonderful that we do, and we can keep more children alive. Sorry. I'm having fun.
Small price to pay, right?
But on the other hand, what that creates is increased stress. So when we're not there, when we're trying to get childcare, we worry. We worry about their physical health and their mental and their self-esteem. We worry about all of these things, and we really love our kids and we want them to be healthy, yet we want, whether we need to work or whether we choose to work or feel called to work or whatever it is. There's so many reasons. I mean, sometimes people lump it all in, women just needs to work, but I love my work. I feel called to do my work. So there's many different reasons. But it affects men and women differently, and not all men are the same, and not all women are the same. But generally speaking, it causes stress, and so we worry. And if we're worried at work all of the time, the performance just isn't. We're not as engaged. So it's a very serious issue, and it really is the quality. But the cost in Utah is quite high.
Oh, yes.
You know
I know.
this. See, mine are all, I have 4 children, but they're all
It's our largest
bill
by far. Yeah.
And you would think coming to Utah would be different, but it's not. And so there's the worry about the cost. There's the worry and the stress about those kinds of things. And then we have women who don't have as many degrees as the rest of the nation, so they're working jobs that are often lower pay, right? So there's that stress. Is it even worth it with the child care? So there's a lot of dynamics in terms of that. But what I want the listeners to understand, that it really is a serious issue in the state of Utah. And there are many, many women. I mean, we're talking thousands, if not a million, women who are very concerned, probably not a million, but anyway, thousands and thousands of women who are really concerned about this issue and how it actually affects their choices and decisions.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Wow. And then really quickly, I wanted to
what we can do real quick about that is that we actually, there's many of us working on this issue, including the YWCA and the Women in the Economy Commission, continued research to better understand that, and then systems of, there's all kinds of systems and people working on that, but the great thing is they're starting to come together and really talk about that and then helping people. Like at UVU, we have a center, a resource, a childcare resource thing, so our students can call and get recommendations and different things on that. And there's some legislation we can take as well. So there's discussions about all those. So things are moving. Is what I'm saying.
That's good. So then I'm gonna take this as a jumping off point for the last one. We're just gonna skip to the last one. So political representation. My belief, and I'm sure we share a belief, is that if we can get some more women in the legislature, we can get some more people for whom this is an issue, to start talking about it and to start creating legislation.
You're talking about like issues like childcare.
Issues like childcare, wage
others.
Gap. I mean, like other things.
Women's issues
right,
that
women's
really
issues.
Aren't totally women's issues.
All of our issues that women tend to talk about. Like I've had situations where I've sat with a group of men who consider themselves fairly forward-thinking and feminists and talk about equality, and then I sit and say, do you have any idea, you men who have children, how much childcare costs and how much of a stress it is?
Really don't.
They have no idea, right? And so my thought is, maybe we can get some more women in the legislature. I mean, what are we at, 20% now?
Yeah, about 20%. And the research, and I have another brief. I don't know if you've read it. It was from 2015 as well, and it's called "Why Do We Need More Women Leaders in Utah?" And it has the business case, but it's really not just a business case. research from politics and nonprofits and all of the areas on how things change when women's voices are in the conversation. And the research in that brief out of business, it's when women are in top positions or corporate boards, but also the research for the state legislature and even city councils. Mm-hmm. So the conversation does change when women are at the table. Mm-hmm. Men and women, there's a lot of similarities that we have, but there's a lot of differences as well. And women tend to, and the research says that when there's more women in the state legislature, that there's more funding given to things that women tend to care about more. And women, not that men are bad, I mean, we need roads and energy and all of that stuff, transportation, and men and safety issues, those are all important too. But if we just have those and don't have the others, then we're not representing all of society. So the research says that women tend to care about education, even more than men. Healthcare, social issues like poverty, issues like sexual assault, and some of those safety issues as well. And so oftentimes when women are not there, then they don't even come up. And the perspective is not there. So you don't want just women in the state legislature either, because some of the other issues will. Does this make sense?
Oh, it makes sense.
Yeah. But when you don't have the problem with 20%, which is better than 16% that we had the year before, so I'm feeling like we're making progress, but we can't
go backwards.
Yes, we can't go backwards. Is that there are subcommittees down there at the legislature still today without one woman. And the conversations, just even if they're great men and forward thinkers, they're not going to consider things because they haven't had those experiences with childcare or so many other issues.
Yeah. So we spend a lot of our time up at the legislature during the session.
So you know.
And so one of our interns was in what was the committee hearing? There was a committee hearing, and there were 13 people, 2 women on the committee, and they were speaking about IUDs, and the men were literally saying out loud, "If I had a uterus, what would I do?" And we're like, "Just get more women on the, like in the committee, and then they'll let you know what it's like."
Because there's no way, and that is. I mean, they need to understand that, but they just don't understand the perspectives, and it's
just
nice
different lived experiences.
It is, and it's nice when, and I think more men are starting to get these issues. It's nice when men do acknowledge that maybe they don't understand, or try to look deeper into that instead of dismissing. So for many years, we've just had legislators, and there still are, to be blunt, male legislators that just dismiss these issues and don't understand. But 50% at least of the people here in Utah are females. And so our lives need to benefit from and are all impacted by all legislation as well. So we just need women's voices there. It's very important. And I would say there's some things that happen at city councils and even on county commissions. So if you're interested, if the viewers are interested, we have a 2017 report. It's a brief, so it's a little bit longer, about 6 pages probably, that goes through and looks at all the representation of women at the city level, at the county level, in different ways, and where we're at. And we had a 2014 brief, so we did a 3-year update to see if we'd made some progress. And in a few ways, we've made some slight progress. Still some work to be done.
Yeah. Do you think that as the millennial or the younger generation starts to come up, is that helpful? Has it been helpful at all in terms of representation for women?
Absolutely in some ways, but there's some national research that continues to, especially on college campuses, to highlight that women students are still not going for the bigger roles and staying in the secretary kinds of roles. And so in terms of change in society, there's 2 things. Women and men, boys and girls, the confidence levels are very different. We're raised differently. Some of it relates to biology. A lot of it relates to socialization. And some of it is choice. But what is very clear moving forward is that we need to do two elements. One is to continue to do work with women, girls and women, in raising their aspirations to lead, in raising, to run for office, to do that, to provide professional development for girls and women in terms of negotiation and lots of different things. So we need to do that, but some people term that fixing women, but no, there's a lot of that. But if it's only that, if it's only the lean in stuff, it's not going to make a difference, because structures and our legislature and most of our businesses are masculine in design. There are structures that do not welcome women in, that do not encourage women, that don't see that are very competitive in terms of compensation, just structures that are not, women don't tend to go towards those. And unless, and the policies as well, public policy, that. And so if there's not changes in policy and cultures within organizations and those things, then women can build themselves up as much as they want. But it's not going to move forward unless we continue to do both sides. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's lots of work in both to do, but we need to still work with women and awareness and help educate men and women on the differences and how wonderful the differences in our brains are, and how you can use both together to really help in society and business and all kinds of settings.
Wow. So I'm going to ask you if we can succinctly kind of put all of this in a little bubble, which I know is so hard. What do you determine the status of women in Utah to be, and what is our value in Utah society?
Two very good questions.
At this moment, I know.
At this moment. We've made some progress in some ways, not enough though. So when we look at things like unpaid care work, poverty, sexual assault, which we're not, we're below the national average in most violent crimes, or most crimes in general, but we're above. 1 in 6 women are raped in the state of Utah. So we've got research on all of those areas. In some of those areas, we're making some progress. I think awareness has increased in Utah. The conversation is there now. We need to continue with that. So I see that we're making some slight progress, but I see some energy from grassroots organizations that I think is really going to help move the needle. So I would say we've made some progress. I love being a woman in Utah, like I said, but we've still got some work to do. And what was the second half of that?
The second half was, what is our value in Utah society?
Well, that's
hard.
Well, of course, I know the research, and I know the value, and I see the value, and I see the amazing things women do. And so, of course, from my perspective, we have so much value, but I still believe, to be blunt, that there's too many men and some women in the state who do not get it, who do not understand that you really need both men and women in all of these conversations and all of these leadership roles. May not be perfect 50-50, but some of the research says if you hit that 30%, that's the tipping point in groups and different things.
10 more % to go in the legislature.
Yeah. Well, that's just getting barely there. So I do think we have, in fact, I'll be very blunt, substantial work to do to get people to understand that value. I see it. I think more people see it, but there's still many people that do not.
Okay. We have our work cut out.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Thank you for joining us.
You're
This was
welcome.
wonderful. Remind us how we can get a hold of your organization, and what's the website again?
So the website is UTWW, all that stuff, utwomen.org.
Okay.
And if you go there, you can actually sign up on that homepage for a monthly email that I send out. It's kind of a newsletter, but I send out a personal email. I have about 15,000 who get it in the state.
Oh, nice.
And it introduces new research, the events coming up, and new resources, infographics or other resources of tools they can use in their homes with their kids about education. We have lots of different things. And so our emails are on the website as well.
Great. All right. And of course, follow us, Better Utah, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to our emails to get updates. Join us next Wednesday at 12:30 for the next Better Utah broadcast. And remember to click Remind Me to get reminders when we go live. Thanks, guys.